Well, hello everybody out there. This is your host from HOWL, Bongo. I hope everybody had an amazing St. Patrick's Day weekend. Today I'm very, 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 very excited to introduce our special guest. Are we still online? Hello, hello, hello.
Hey, you there?
Hey, hello. Can you hear me?
I lost you in the intro.
I am so sorry about that.
No worries.
I don't know what. And you know what's funny? We were chatting here for 20 minutes flawlessly.
Oh, yeah. I lost you at Howl's first, and then that was it.
Oh my gosh. Okay. All right. And I'm just checking on my YouTube here just to make sure that it is still live. Anyways, hello everybody out there. I did see that we had 2 viewers. So I hope you're still out there, folks. Let me just make sure. Can you still see us? Oh my gosh. Of course this happened. Okay, looks like we're still here.
Yeah.
Okay, looks like we're still on. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your patience with that. Anyways, our very first keynote speaker that we've booked for HOWL 2024, November 1, 2, and 3 this year. Please welcome Jill Heinerth. Hello.
Hello. Actually, I'm Jill's husky sounding alter ego here after a big weekend at a conference.
Yeah.
So I won't sound like this when I meet everybody in November.
Yeah, for sure. And so we have Richard and Joe who have logged on here to watch the interview as well. So hello, Richard and Joe. Richard already has bought his ticket, by the way, so you're going to be meeting him. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. Oh, and I've got Kate online as well. Hello, Kate, as well. Very nice of you all to join us here today. I hope you can hear us loud and clear. Yeah. So you were just telling me you were at it's a diving convention that you were at.
Yeah, it's actually North America's oldest dive club and show. So it was the 70th anniversary, and it has a really iconic film festival. And I was showing a piece of a new documentary.
Wow. That's so cool. That's so cool. And yes, everybody at HOWL is super excited to have you participate this year because we've never had a underwater specialist before, ever.
That's cool. I mean, underwater photography is now getting into the realm of accessibility. So
yeah.
I hope to kind of inspire some people to play around a bit. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, wouldn't that be so cool if as a result of your participation, some other people get their feet wet, no pun intended, with underwater photography. Yeah. And then what's coming up next? So you just got back from this convention. What's next on your agenda?
Actually, I'm headed out to a place called God's Pocket, which is near Port Hardy on the northern tip of Vancouver Island. Wow. And to me, it's one of the most beautiful places on earth. It's both topside and underwater, but it's absolutely spectacular. So I'm taking my camera out there for a nice little 10-day trip, and then from there out to Newfoundland to shoot some icebergs for CBC.
Wow, that's incredible. Yeah. That's very inspiring to hear. Very cool. And then so what went through your head when we reached out to you and said, hey, we do this photography thing every year. You want to come and join us?
Yeah, when you get an outreach like that, and then the first thing you do is you kind of Google someone and you lurk a little bit and you go, what is this? And then I was like, why don't I know about this? This looks like so much fun. I love these kinds of eclectic gatherings where I think this is where the magic happens.
Yeah, absolutely. And we were just so enthusiastic to have you on board, and just beyond excited that you were available, and you were also equally as enthusiastic. So again, yeah,
I'm thrilled. I don't think this will be the last time you see me, I'm sure.
Awesome. Well, we hit it off right away. So
absolutely.
You can come and visit anytime.
Cool.
Yeah, awesome. All right. Well, one of the definitely one of the things that I want to do today is we're going to look at some photos. We're going to look at some photos here. And as you know, how our big thing and our overarching theme is photography ethics too. So as we go through your photos, feel free to talk a little bit about, from your perspective, how do you practice photography ethics, especially, given the fact that you're underwater, right? So you bring you have such a neat perspective on that subject. So the first photo that we're going to look at, and it's right behind you and me right now on the screen, is Arctic on the Edge. So it's the one with the diver, and it's kind of looking up. And I'm just gonna tell me more about this photo, please.
Yeah, so you're actually looking at a piece of Greenland there.
This is Greenland. Wow.
Well, what happens is the Greenland ice sheet, as it breaks up, these big chunks of the Greenland ice sheet actually move across the Davis Strait. So they come over to Baffin Island. They get stuck in the sea ice for the winter. And then in the springtime, as the thaw starts, they break away and they drift down the east coast of Canada. So here I was actually shooting off of the northern part of Newfoundland, like just between Newfoundland and Labrador.
Cool.
And what's cool about these things is that they're like endangered species. They change by the minute. These icebergs like fizz and crack and pop and break as you're diving and change shape. And as they change shape, they roll. And so it's one of these things that you take a picture of and nobody will ever have a chance to see it like that again. It's kind of interesting.
That's a really that's and who knows how old that iceberg is, and that's a really, really poetic thought. I really like the way you put that. They really capture that moment in time, and they're never going to be the same ever again. And
I mean, we're losing the sea ice in the north, and we will probably live in an ice-free Arctic in our lifetimes. And so every photograph I take of an iceberg, it feels like a little requiem to lost sea ice and a changing planet. So I have a real fondness for the polar regions.
Yeah, absolutely. And can I ask you about so you took this photo, and I guess it's a diving partner that is in it. Yeah?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. And what's it like swimming in this water?
Well, obviously it's cold. So
like how do you handle that?
I mean, sometimes when I'm diving, I mean, in Antarctica especially, it can be as cold as like -2.5 degrees because it's colder in the salt water.
Wow.
So I wear a dry suit, a lot of undergarments, kind of like the equivalent of a snowmobile suit underneath a waterproof membrane, essentially. So there's a lot of bulk, and one of the challenging things is actually operating the camera with dry gloves, because it's like you're a comic book, mitt kind of thing, or a baseball mitt, and you're trying to operate your camera housing. So there's a lot of stuff going on, and then quite frequently we're using some advanced life support equipment that's a little closer to what an astronaut wears for a spacewalk than what we would wear for traditional scuba dives, and it gives us a little more time underwater, and then we don't make bubbles, which changes the whole experience underwater, because if you make bubbles, you scare animals away. If you don't make bubbles, then suddenly you're part of the environment, and you're less disruptive to the creatures of the underwater world, and they're kind of curious and swim up to you.
Wow.
Yeah.
I've never thought about that. Bubbles are so startling. Wow.
Yeah, it totally changes the underwater experience getting on one of these rebreathers. Yeah.
Wow, cool. And so if you're doing an Arctic or an Antarctic dive, you've been talking about your dry suit. Do you ever wear a wetsuit in that environment, or is it like now kind of like dry suit is the standard for that? Yeah.
Dry suit's the thing for me. Although I have to say, just 3 days ago, I was up at Morrison Quarry, which is near Ottawa, and I was diving with 3 paraplegic guys who were learning to be ice divers, and I was shooting them, and they were diving in wetsuits because they actually have to because of their disabilities. And man, these guys were heroes. It's cold.
Yeah. Well, they a couple years ago they had to repair a dam that's here in downtown Whitney, and they had to work all year round, including in January, February, and they actually had divers. They had to, they had this dive team that were like swimming in January, and it looks awful. Yeah. But I'm sure familiar territory for you.
Yeah, I actually love it. I mean, when you grow up in Canada and you swim in any temperature, right?
Yep.
And love it.
So cool. Okay, let's move on to our second photo. And what is it going to be? This is all, the order of photos is all a surprise to Jill here.
Random, that's good.
Yeah. Okay, so this photo, it's a diver that is backlit, and they're really close to kind of, it's like a sandy cave that they're in. Mm-hmm. And the diver, I don't know what they're holding, maybe a flashlight or something like that. Yeah. So what's the story behind this photo? Please tell me.
Yeah, when I light caves, I want the light to be justifiable.
Yeah.
Like I don't like over lighting and making these environments look unnatural or theatrical. And so when I backlight a diver, I think of that as the person that's following them, because you follow in single file through a cave system. And so that's the illumination that happens. Like if I turn around and I look over my shoulder and there's two more divers behind me, that's what I see. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I like to capture. And it pulls the person, out from the environment a little bit, like separates them from the background. Because oh my gosh, I wish cave divers loved color, but they're all such, superhero loving, they want to be black, gray, silver,
Mm-hmm.
Nobody wants to wear red. And I'm like, oh my God, please. Like whenever I look for models, I'm like, do you have a red dry suit, please?
Well, if I was on your team, I'd have an orange dry suit.
Oh, it'd be perfect. Yeah. Well, because of, obviously the way that light performs underwater is completely different. We lose light, but we also lose color underwater. So when you can get someone in the water, especially in one of these cave environments with a warm colored suit or something, it really pops.
That's so wow. Everything that you just said there has really just kind of blown my mind, because I've never thought about how do you light an underwater cave.
Yeah.
That's
there's zero light, right? We used to do all strobes. So I had a whole bunch of slave operated underwater strobes, and you would go into the environment and then very carefully swim around and set up all your slaves so that the sensor hopefully is pointing in the right direction. And then get into position, and you don't want to disturb any silt in the whole time you do that. Yeah. And then when you fire off your shot, hopefully everything triggers. And if it doesn't, then you swim through and set it all up again. Or what would frequently happen in the early days is you'd hit your shutter, and the first slave would trigger the next one and the next one, and then they go into this like terminal loop of everything going bam, 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 firing over and over and over until the batteries were gone. Wow. You couldn't swim around fast enough to turn them all off.
Wow.
But these days I do more continuous lighting underwater than strobes, because we now have much more powerful lights and smaller packages.
I've also worked with the whole slave system and all that kind of stuff, but a constant light is a lot more manageable, right? Less guessing, right?
Yeah. Well, it's got a totally different feel,
and
right?
It does have a different feel. I completely agree with you there. Yep.
Yeah, and I mean, back in the film days, when you've only got 24 or 36 in the camera, then the slaves also made more sense. But now that you can preview on the fly and know what you're shooting even before you've pressed the shutter, it's great.
Very cool. I have one question here from a viewer. Richard asks, what are the different challenges between shooting in freshwater versus saltwater photography?
Interesting. In fact, sometimes I'm even shooting in both in one place, because some caves actually, you're diving in freshwater and then you reach an interface, and then you've got saltwater below. The saltwater in general is sort of bluer, and oftentimes more clear. And the freshwater is sort of greener looking. And then at that interface, you have what's called a halocline. And when you pass through that, it's like you're passing through a different density of water. And it's like looking at like the way the heat comes off of a barbecue and you can't quite focus because of those different temperatures. So so you get those kinds of different effects, but we're always dealing with turbidity. So generally, saltwater environments are better visibility, except if you've got a plankton bloom, or right now out in BC you've got a herring spawn, and so the water kind of looks like milk at the moment. So there's always a challenge, and a lot of it has to do with turbidity or the visibility. So whatever particulate or algae or plankton is suspended in the water, because that'll not only knock down the light, but knock down the visibility, but also cause backscatter effects. If your lighting or your strobes are not positioned and angled properly, then every particle of that silt or plankton will look like a great big spot on your photo.
Wow. And just hearing about all these things that us land photographers don't have to worry about, it's that's so mind-blowing.
Yeah, it's funny because when I first jumped in the water, I thought, I'm a good land photographer, so I'll just apply these same lessons underwater. And I quickly realized it's such a completely foreign environment that the rules just aren't the same.
Wow.
And then, of course, there's the additional challenge of, we're always trying to ensure that we're not manipulating the environment and we're not damaging the environment in any way. But now you have to do that in 3 dimensions while trying to float neutrally without touching anything or harming any of the inhabitants underwater.
Wow.
Yeah, you can't just like drop down on your knees in the sand, because there's stuff that lives in the sand too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, and the next photo that I've got here, this is you taking a selfie in what looks like a colony of jellyfish. Is that what that is?
Oh, yeah. A bloom. It's a group of jellyfish is called a bloom, which is kind of interesting. Yeah.
I love it. Okay.
Yeah, that was a really cool opportunity. I was up in Terra Nova National Park, and we were in a Zodiac, like an inflatable boat, and we were looking off in the distance, and I said, "Is that a shoal? Like, is that some sort of a rock formation there? Because it's not on the map." And,
Okay.
And we're like, "Oh wow!" None of us were really familiar with the area, so we went driving towards the shoal, and that's when I realized the shoal was changing shape. And we threw a drone up in the air and realized that we were driving right into a bloom of jellyfish, and it was on like this happens like on a full moon in particular.
Yeah.
So we got there, and I realized they were moon jellies, which aren't harmful.
Okay.
So they won't sting you. They're very, very mild sting anyway.
Yeah.
And so I said, all right, let's do it. And we rolled into the water, and my partner and I immediately couldn't see each other. They were so thick. It was like being in like the IKEA bouncy ball room, completely, buried by these,
I know exactly what you're
squishy
talking
balls.
about. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and that bloom actually went 40 feet deep. So there must have been millions of these jellyfish. But as we're swimming through this, and I'm shooting selfies and shooting the other way and trying to backlight some stuff, every once in a while the moon jellies would kind of part and open up, and these bright red lion's mane jellyfish would appear, and they're about the size of like larger than a basketball in the head, and their tentacles can stream behind them for 20 or 30 feet. Those ones sting bad. So so as soon as I would see the red, I'd be like, no, try to get away from it.
Wow. And what is the lighting in this jellyfish selfie? Like there's kind of light behind your head. Is that like moonlight or sunlight, or is
that
that
was
your
sun.
strobe?
That was sun, and then I had a couple of small light in motion underwater lights, like 3,800 lumens on each side. And it's interesting because underwater, all photography is like looking at light and then, playing with that and seeing how it plays on your subject. But that's especially true underwater, because you can take the same picture rotate your body in 360 degrees, and you get such a different effect from the light. Like if the sun's coming over your shoulder, it's going to cause that backscatter effect, but if it's hitting something on the edges, then it gives a much more dimensional feel. So you can sit in one place literally and just shift your viewpoint or your angle to the sun and get such a different effect underwater.
That's so cool. This is probably one of the coolest selfies out there, I would say. and
it was cold too. It was about 2 degrees that day.
Yeah. Wow. Well, you look very peaceful and comfortable in this photo.
Oh, I would have stayed down as long as I could. I was having so much fun that day.
Yeah. What a wild opportunity. That's so cool. Mm-hmm. Okay, so the next one that I have got up here is this is a Tobermory shipwreck.
Yeah.
And such a really cool effect. There's a whole bunch of photos in your portfolio where you do this, where you see the subject underwater, you see the line where the water and air meet, and then you can, there's clouds and then the tree horizon too. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that angle because I think it really connects people with the environment that they might never get to see, and it gives them sort of more context of something that's quite abstract. And I also love being just beneath the surface and just letting this tiny lens of water flow over my dome port to create these weird ripples and stuff. And you kind of see that in that interface in that particular shot a bit. But that it's the lens of the water, I guess, and it's almost like what would the water see, if it was looking up at the terrestrial world. But yeah, that shipwreck is called the Sweepstakes. So I learned to dive there in Tobermory, and that was one of my first dives. Not that photo, but that spot, and it just got me so excited about diving, but also about capturing the images that I would see in these unique places. And I mean, you can go there on snorkel, you can go there on a glass bottom boat. So it's a very shallow shipwreck, so you can see it right from the surface.
Yep. I've visited Tobermory 3 times in my life, and I've done the snorkeling twice with that was actually the first time I had a professional wetsuit that we rented from one of the dive shops there, and it was such a special experience.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, it's a busy place nowadays in the summer.
Yeah, I know, right? I only travel because I am a tourism operator. I only travel, Monday to Wednesday. So
Smart.
In November and April, in all of those months. But
which is great. That's when I love going off season. Yeah,
I'm all about the off season. Yeah,
fantastic.
So for folks out there, if you haven't visited Tobermory, go there in the off season.
Definitely.
Yeah. All right. And okay, so we're now at this incredible photo, the black and white photo of the seal.
Oh yeah, sea lion actually.
Sea lion, sorry.
Yeah, that's a stellar sea lion, and that's a really good one for right now because as I was mentioning, out in Vancouver Island, place called Hornby Island, there's sea lions, stellar sea lions, California sea lions, and right now they are having the time of their life because the herring just spawned, and they're just chowing down. So I'm going to go there in a couple of weeks, and those sea lions, so we never want to encroach on a marine mammal. That's important, and it's also the law. I mean, you don't want to ever harass any marine life in order to get an image. But out there, they're so well fed, and they're so excited, and they're so curious. You just jump in the water in the vicinity of where they hang out, and they bring all their friends to you.
Oh my god!
So they're quite orally fixated, and they'll kind of pull at your suit, and I've actually had one grab my head in his jaws and pull me to the surface to play with his friends. And they'll play fetch. If I throw a rock, they'll bring it back to me, or they'll capture my bubbles. If I'm diving with a tank, they'll capture my bubbles, swim around, come back, and then spit the bubbles back at my dome port. And
that's hilarious.
So yeah, I mean, when I dive with them, I'm spending the whole time just kind of giggling. Yeah. And I think that's something that they like too. They just like if we take an underwater scooter, or if we sing, or play games or whatever, it seems to keep them really interested, and they'll go away for a few minutes and then they'll come back with like another 30 sea lions. And they're big. They're very big.
Yeah. Well, you can't quite tell how big the animal that we're looking at in this photo.
Yeah.
How long is this sea lion that we're looking at?
That one, I don't remember that one being too terribly big, but I mean, seeing one like as long as a car is not unusual.
Wow.
They're pretty big animals. Yeah.
Wow, incredible. Yeah.
It can get a little rough. Like it's halfway between like playing in a pack of puppies and being in a bar fight. So yeah.
That's an incredible state of mind.
Yeah,
Bar fights. Yeah. Well, when I was going through your portfolio, it was very hard for me just to select a finite amount of images because there's so many good ones. But yeah, there's a really strong emotional connection that I feel when I look at this. I don't know, this obviously this animal is adorable, but it almost looks like a dancer or something. Like it just it looks so graceful. Yeah.
I feel like they're showing off, and that's what they do. Like they zip past you at high speed and they spin around, and I've even had them steal the fins off my diving partner, and then you chase them down to try and get the fins back, and they're obviously like they're goofing with you. It's quite fun.
It's so funny. Wow. Well, if there's any reason to get into underwater photography, it is to have the chance to photograph these very animated animals.
Yeah, I mean, there's not very many opportunities that you can have like that in life, like because like I say, you never want to chase an animal. I mean, obviously, like you don't want to harass it, but also most underwater photographers spend the first years of their underwater photography career just getting the pictures of fish butts before they realize that they just have to stay still and wait to see what will come to them. Like you can't chase something; you'll lose every time.
Yeah. That's good advice. Okay, and the last photo that we're going to be looking at today is the one. This is also the cover of your book.
Ah, yes.
Yeah. And what was the name of this photo again?
So the location is called The Pit, and it's a cenote in Mexico. So a lot of people have been to the Riviera Maya region. There are a lot of caves there and sinkholes. And in this particular location, my husband and I found a very deep system below all the other caves in the region. So it was a really special discovery for me. But in the course of my exploration, I actually suffered from a pretty serious diving accident. Had a case of decompression sickness.
Oh,
and
yeah, I've heard about, that's very scary.
yeah,
Oh,
it may have, it could have been a career or a life ender, but I got through that. And when I wrote my book, I negotiated with Penguin Random House and HarperCollins, and I said, listen, I want to be contractually able to choose my own cover and choose my own book title, because that's something that's often non-negotiable when you write a book.
Mm-hmm.
And at first they said no, and I said, well, that's a deal killer for me, because I want to be sure that it's something that's meaningful to me, but I also want to be sure that it portrays safe and ethical diving practices as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so I decided in 2018 to go back to the very spot where I experienced the first symptoms of decompression illness. And I just sat underwater and waited, pointed my camera in the right direction, framed everything up, but I kind of waited to find the right shot, to find the right shaft of light that changes throughout the day.
Mm-hmm.
And then I saw this ghostly figure. This is not a model. It's just a random diver swim into that shaft of light. And I went, oh, click.
Wow.
This is the shot. And,
Wow.
I probably shot a couple hundred frames in that spot that day. I was under the water for hours,
Wow.
but that just felt like it was my own ghost in the pit.
I'm getting goosebumps.
Yeah. And
how meaningful is that? Wow.
It was really meaningful. And then when I took it back to my editor and said, this is what I want to put on the cover, she was like, oh, yeah.
Well,
So,
I know this is
yeah.
this image is the perfect cover of a book. Like
Thanks.
it's so beautiful.
Thank you. Well, it's also nice when you know what you're gonna do with a photo and you
Yeah.
get down there and you go, "Okay, I'm gonna have to leave room." Like, if it's for a magazine cover, shoot vertical, leave room for the masthead, but also leave the space for all the little call outs for articles and stuff, and so I was picturing exactly how I wanted that book to look.
And I love it that the
Yeah.
editor, once you showed them
Yeah.
what this photo, they were like,
This
"Oh yeah,
He
okay, I
said, "I
get
get
it."
it. I
Like,
get it." And then they used a second shot from that same shoot as, one of the inside pages too, so
that's
yeah.
so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those blue and green and purple colors and just that ray
Mhm.
of light and the fact that
Mhm.
this ghostly diver also just popped up, it
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
so perfectly. Everything
Yeah,
about it.
and what you're seeing, like, it kinda looks like a bit of a witch's cauldron at the bottom. That
Mhm,
smoky stuff that you see in the shot is,
mhm,
hydrogen sulfide. So, like, rotting vegetation in a sinkhole or a cenote,
mhm,
creates hydrogen sulfide, and so when you pass through that foggy layer,
mhm.
all you can smell is what smells like rotten eggs, and then below that, there's that much depth again of clear water.
What? Wow.
Yeah, it's so deep.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is so cool. I can look at this
Mhm.
image all day long.
Ah,
Yeah.
awesome, awesome, and you can go there and snorkel.
All right. I will have to do
Yeah,
that. Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, awesome. Well, I could ask you a million questions because you're so interesting and talented, and you have such incredible stories behind your amazing images. But if you want to ask Jill some questions in person, or maybe buy her book and also get it signed,
Yeah.
you're just gonna have to come to Howl. Jill's gonna be here, the keynote speaker. Jill, you're gonna be presenting in the late afternoon on Saturday, November 2nd. And you're obviously going to be here for the festivities and the
Oh, whole
music.
thing.
Jill's going to be here for the whole thing.
Yeah.
And so yeah, if you're interested in Jill's work and maybe you're interested in maybe getting into underwater photography or even just asking some questions about all of those things, definitely consider coming out to Howl. Again, that's November 1, 2, and 3 in 2024, and it'll be here on the edge of Algonquin Park in Whitney, Ontario. Awesome. Richard online is saying, love the blue colors
Oh, thanks.
of that photo. But Richard's going to be here, and I'm sure that Richard, you think of your questions that you're going to inevitably ask Jill in a few months at the end of the year here. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much, Jill, for taking the time out of your busy schedule to chat with us here today. I loved every second chatting with you here. As a photography nerd, this is... I was joking just before we went live. I was nervous about this, maybe because I'm starstruck. But anyways, thank you again for your time.
Oh, my
And
pleasure. Thank you for inviting me. I'm really looking forward to the event. I think it's just going to be an awesome, awesome weekend.
it definitely will. Yeah, yeah. It's there's photo conventions all over the world for, like Las Vegas, I know, has some massive conventions. There's thousands of people attending. Ours is a very unconventional convention because it's a very small. There's only 40 at max 40 attendees, and then it kind of feels like by the end of the weekend it feels like a big family, and it gives you a lot of warm fuzzies as well, and above all else is also the commitment to the message of,
Yeah.
this the planet is fragile, more fragile than we think, and we
Mhm.
kind of take it for granted. And so yeah, we thank you, Jill, for being an ambassador on the behalf of wildlife photography ethics.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, we have such a, cool opportunity as photographers to, animate this beautiful world, help people fall in love with it so they'll want to protect it too.
Exactly. All right, and I'm just going to say goodbye to, we've got Joe out there, Richard, Ken, we've got Kate out there as well. Thank you, everybody, for watching. All right. Well, I'm going to sign off here. And yeah, again, if you want to check out Jill's talk, you're just going to have to come to HOWL November 1, 2, and 3 in 2024. We'll see you all there.